There are poor people everywhere in the world. South Africa, Asia, America, the Middle East, and Europe. Poverty is the biggest problem in the whole world.
If we print more money and distribute to the whole world, everyone can be rich.
Oh my God. Fred, you always come up with ridiculous ideas. Let me simply explain to you why printing more money is wrong. In this video, we'll understand the question of why the government doesn't just print more money. Let's do what you said. Let's print more money. What happens in the end? Of course, inflation happens.
What does inflation mean?
Let me explain simply, Fred. Inflation is actually something like this. Let's say there are only 10 chocolates at the grocery store in your neighborhood. But one day, suddenly everyone's pockets are filled with lots of money. Everyone thinks they've gotten rich and runs to the grocery store wanting to buy chocolate. But there are still only 10 chocolates. What happens? The grocer thinks, if this many people want it, let me raise the price a bit. Then he raises it a bit more. Eventually, the chocolate becomes almost as expensive as gold. This is what we call inflation. When there's a lot of money, but few goods, prices go up.
But the grocer sold all his chocolates and now isn't he rich?
Fred, you're so naive. This doesn't make the grocer richer. You're right about this. At first, he sold all the chocolates and made a profit. But here's what you're missing. The government printed too much money, and now everyone in the whole world has lots and lots of money. And these guys with pockets full of money are competing to buy chocolate from all the grocers. The wholesaler who sells chocolate to the grocer, the factory where the wholesaler gets the chocolate from, the farm where the factory gets the cocoa from, they're all competing to get more product from each other. Our raw material here is cocoa. And sorry, this is also limited. The government can print more money, but it can't print more cocoa. And the price of cocoa, which will cause this chocolate to be produced, will also have increased. Because everyone has money and everyone wants to buy chocolate. Do you still want to print more money, Fred?
Well, will you get mad if I say yes?
There were people in history who thought like Fred, and the result was a disaster. Let me tell you about this. Fred, are you listening? We're going on a 3-stop journey. Let's go to the 1920s, to Germany, to the Weimar Republic. In 1920s Germany, when people woke up, the value of the money in their pockets had almost disappeared. I'm not even exaggerating. You needed to carry money in a wheelbarrow just to buy a loaf of bread. Germany, after losing World War I, both the country and the economy were in shambles. Factories weren't working, roads were broken, people were unemployed. On top of that, Germany was made to pay very large war reparations. In other words, the country had to pay a huge debt installment to other countries. But there was no money, neither in the treasury nor in the banks. The government thought what Fred just said and made a huge mistake by saying, since we don't have money, let's print more money.
That's great. I think it's the right decision.
Fred, be careful. Don't let the popcorn get stuck in your throat, because you might not like what you're about to hear. When money multiplied in the economy, but the number of products stayed the same, prices started to rise rapidly. In other words, everyone had hundreds, thousands of marks in their pockets, but this money was worth almost less than paper. Thus, Germany was dragged into hyperinflation, one of the craziest economic events in history. The situation got so bad that people had to carry bags full of money to buy a loaf of bread. Bread that was 250 marks in January 1923 became exactly 200 billion marks in November 1923. Savings disappeared, families couldn't breathe, and the country was swept up in a huge economic storm. This huge crisis increased unrest in society and opened the door to a dark period that would completely change Germany's fate in the future. Thus, the difference between printing lots of money and real wealth remained as an unforgettable lesson in history. Hey Fred, are you there?
Well, I need to go to the bathroom.
We're going to the second stop. We're going to Zimbabwe. For an ordinary Zimbabwean citizen, carrying a huge sack full of money to buy an egg from the market was the most normal thing. In fact, even this sack full of money might not be enough. This is exactly the kind of nightmare the Zimbabwean economy fell into in 2007 to 2008. This event is known as one of the most extreme examples in world financial history. Zimbabwe was formerly known as Rhodesia and was a country based on discrimination like in South Africa. Then, after apartheid ended, Zimbabwe was founded in 1980, and Robert Mugabe came to power. Mugabe decided to take the large fields of white farmers and distribute them to black farmers, calling it land reform in the economy. But here was the problem. Most of these new farmers had almost no experience in agricultural economics, production management, finance, and business. Therefore, the country's food production dropped rapidly, unemployment increased, foreign trade collapsed, and the international financial world began to impose heavy sanctions on the country. The country had literally entered an economic deadlock. The state treasury was empty, the budget deficit had grown, foreign exchange reserves were depleted. The government followed a wrong financial policy to solve this problem: uncontrolled money printing. They thought, if we print money, we'll pay the debts, we'll revive the economy.
Hey, this time I didn't say anything.
But now, even Fred knows that the economy doesn't work like this. If the money supply increases while production of goods and services doesn't increase, prices explode. This is exactly what happened in Zimbabwe. Get ready, Fred. We're going to the third stop, to Venezuela. Fred, this place is a complete oil paradise. Imagine a country with the most oil in the world. It has so much oil that when you dig the ground, gasoline practically gushes out. Such a country's economy should be super strong, right?
Dude, oil means money. Even I know that. I don't believe this place's economy collapsed.
Then listen carefully, Fred. Such a financial disaster happened to Venezuela that people eventually started throwing their money into the streets. You might think, what do you mean? You throw your money in the trash? This story shows how strange the world of money and economy can be. When the calendar showed 2008, Venezuela was very rich. Thanks to the oil they sold, it was an economic giant. But here was the problem. The government didn't use this big money to diversify the economy, establish new industries, strengthen the financial system, or increase production. Instead, it distributed excessive amounts of subsidies to the people. In other words, the state kept prices artificially very low, saying everything should be cheap, everyone should be happy. Moreover, there was a socialist government in Venezuela at that time, and it completely controlled the economy. It didn't allow private companies to grow, narrowed the market mechanism, and the state made all financial decisions. Therefore, the economy couldn't grow healthily. Production was low, tax revenue was scarce, and there was widespread economic mismanagement in the country. Then came 2008, and oil prices suddenly crashed. Venezuela's budget, which was dependent on oil revenue, collapsed. State revenues fell apart, and economic stability was shattered. But because the government knew the people would be very angry if it stopped the subsidies, it couldn't reduce this aid. So what did it do? It took the most wrong financial step: printing more money. The money supply increased, but production didn't increase. This imbalance in the economy led to prices rising incredibly fast. That is, hyperinflation. Venezuelans suddenly saw that their money was worthless. So much so that the Venezuelan bolivar became so devalued that people were throwing their money in the trash, even making and selling origami, because it was more useful even as paper. Hey Fred, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I hope you've understood that printing too much money is wrong.
Fred, you were the one who said this. You'll never change, will you? Anyway, friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Fred and I will be making many more videos here.